Ancient World, Ancient Nukes, Chapter 11. The wind howls against desolate desert wastelands. It is the modern day. There is only ruins left, but the devastation is obvious. The nameless archaeologist staring at the remains of what once was a proud city. He has seen the destruction firsthand, but now seeks confirmation, and somehow trying to unravel the idea that they're witnessing may have entangled the ancient civilizations in the first place. The ruins, the devastation before them, are not merely the product of time and decay. The sands have a story, one etched into the very fabric of history, a history shattered by forces that no one in the present world could ever imagine. The nameless archaeologist kneels, running his fingers through the glass-like sand, and memories of his entangled visions flash through his mind. The crystals of the sand glimmer faintly in the sunlight, reflecting something far more destructive than erosion, and he whispers to himself, "This is where it all happened. The war, the destruction. We've seen it, but this confirms everything." He picks up a fragment of pottery, examining it with a mixture of awe and sorrow. The broken piece carries the weight of the story that led to this moment. What he holds in his hands is more than a relic. It is a key, evidence of the war that shattered civilizations, torn apart, and yet sitting separate from one another, separated by millennia and thousands of miles. He then turns his attention to a peculiar artifact, a piece of metal scorched beyond recognition, and nearby a strange glowing material is found, a crystalline formation that glows faintly, similar to the one they saw during their visions of Mesopotamia's nuclear devastation. "This was it," he says with awe. "This is where the fire came from." He holds the fragment in his hand, the weight of the truth settling in. The connection between the ancient world he observed and the reality before him is undeniable. With each fragment unearthed, the truth becomes clearer. This was no natural disaster. This was the aftermath of an atomic event, one born from the ambitions of kings and pharaohs, gods and men, and a meddlesome fallen angel hell-bent on ruining the world. Over the ensuing months and years, the archaeologist gives speeches, writes books, goes online, even has a podcast, and yet the response he gets is simply a flat denial of everything that he said. He's gone from a conventional, mainstream archaeologist to a fringe theorist, deemed a conspiracy believer. And yet the nameless one perseveres. The sands of time may bury the past, but the truth cannot remain hidden forever, and he stands at the edge of revelation, knowing that the story that he and his research assistants have uncovered is not just one of history, but one that may be yet to come. The war of gods and men is not over yet, and the consequences of that war still linger, waiting to be unearthed once again. And while his research assistants have fled for more conventional pastures, the archaeologist, the nameless one, stays the course. His travels bring him to a modern physics institute, a sterile environment of polished floors, sleek equipment, and the quiet hum of scientific instruments. The archaeologist sits across from a physicist in a small office cluttered with books and papers. A chalkboard is dotted with equations looming behind them, and sunlight streams in through a narrow window, casting long shadows over the room. "Thank you for seeing me. Many physicists simply refuse to talk about this. I find your theories fascinating. They're very good fiction. And I listen to your podcast. It entertains me. You're providing a purpose, if not a scientific one." And the archaeologist recoils for a moment. This is science. This is based on what I saw myself and what I was able to confirm with the artifacts I've brought with me. Should I show you? Oh, no, it's not necessary. I've no doubt that there are items that are dotted with a certain amount of radioactive decay, but, well, that could be a host of many different factors, including meteorites and other things, so it's not necessary. But you do have questions, and I do find your programs entertaining and your books, so talk to me, please. What can I do for you today, sir? The physicist, young, bespectacled, rather strong, finds the archaeologist to be a bit of an anomaly. He speaks well, his papers are well researched, but his theories are simply far too fringe, far too unconventional to merit consideration. The archaeologist is at a loss as where to begin. He's been beaten down so many times, even by the television and radio and podcast programs that specialize in the supernatural and the fantastical. I know what you're trying to ask me, the physicist says. You want to know about the entanglement of space and timelines. And if it can occur between subatomic particles, that is, they can be attached at distances that defy all time and distance and logic, why couldn't it apply to civilizations and events, right? And the archaeologist looks up, his eyes brightening, and he nods. Well, first of all, I have a wife and kids, and I'd probably lose my professor position with this institute and also teaching, and I have a number of book deals out there. But all those considerations aside, there's one major problem with your idea, and that is that this entanglement, as we call it, the spooky action at a distance that troubled the likes of Einstein, it only applies to subatomic particles. Macro things that are life-size, like people and buildings and, well, your ziggurats and your pyramids, it simply doesn't work. So, yes, there are two different sciences, one for the tiny subatomic world and one for your world. But what if, the archaeologist continues, it would apply to timelines? I'm not talking about structures anymore within those timelines or the civilizations or the pharaohs. I'm talking about actual timelines, events. It hasn't been ruled out. I've read your books. I've read many books. I'm sure you have, the physicist says. And yes, no one has ruled out what they might call temporal entanglement. It hasn't been proven, but certainly it's a possibility. But what might have triggered this entanglement of timelines? And the archaeologist says, well, simple. The attention that I gave to this issue with my research assistants when I came across these crystallized sands which only match the likes of those found in sites like Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it was with this that I began my quest. Doesn't attention affect the outcome of events within your science? And the scientist sits forward because the archaeologist has hit a nerve. Oh, well, that only exists at a subatomic level. Well, we know that it exists there, the faceless one says, but could it be that it also exists at a macro level? You cannot rule that out as well. Otherwise, the idea of, well, the law of attraction and even attention causing things like healing. What about how plants grow when they get attention, or how human beings seem to thrive with love and care? And the physicist smiles. You're a very wise man, and I'd certainly give any recommendation you would need for a new teaching position. I understand things might not have worked out where you were, but these are fascinating theories. What I've uncovered, the archaeologist continues, doesn't fit in with any conventional timeline. Civilizations that never should have intersected appear to be intertwined, not just in their rise and fall, but in their pursuit of atomic knowledge. It's as if the atomic knowledge pursuit is the catalyst, or perhaps it was my inquiry itself But something caused their histories to overlap, and I believe that this goes beyond coincidence. The physicist sits back, the skepticism slowly giving way to curiosity. Finally, he leans forward, resting his chin on his hand, mulling over the idea. So you're suggesting that timelines themselves could become entangled in the same way that these tiny microscopic or submicroscopic particles do? The archaeologist nods. Well, yes, it sounds fantastical perhaps to you, but, well, it's a possibility that scientists are in fact considering. Oh, that's fringe theory at best. But the archaeologist refuses to go down and instead comes back swinging, saying, well, Hugh Everett III was nearly kicked out of Princeton with a mathematics theory about many worlds or a multiverse. You would have been laughed right out of the room. Now it's almost doctrine when it comes to things like string theory. So with that in mind, just because something is fringe doesn't mean it's wrong. So today there are multiverses. Many multiverses, at least according to comic books and, well, films as well. The physicist, with a sense of humor, chuckles, along with the archaeologist, for they've both gone to the movies, and one particular company uses the multiverse as often as it uses a soundtrack. The archaeologist then grows serious, searching. So what role have I played in all of this? Did my search cause this entanglement? Did I make these events happen? And the physicist, thoughtful, says, you know something, it's possible observation changes outcomes in quantum experiments, tiny microscopic particles, but what if it applies to more than just these particles, as you say? Your questions, your investigations, they may have been the spark. Without your intent, nothing might have happened, or you may have been the key that set it all in motion. The archaeologist feels the weight of this realization sink in, wondering if his curiosities played a more active role in entangling these ancient civilizations than he ever imagined. He then says, puzzled, so by simply seeking answers, I've become part of the process? I've caused these events to unfold? And the physicist nods. Well, perhaps you may be the catalyst. Your observation and intent might have woven those timelines together, at least theoretically. In quantum terms, it would make sense. You could be the observer that makes that entanglement real. The archaeologist is struck by the possibility that his desire to understand the past has not only revealed forgotten histories, but also altered them. His inquiry may have bridged time and space in ways he never anticipated. The chapter ends with the archaeologist facing a profound truth. His quest for knowledge may have bound him to these ancient civilizations, playing a pivotal role in their shared fate across time. Momentarily, both the archaeologist and the physicist consider an unsettling possibility. While the effects of observation are typically confined to the subatomic, perhaps the act of investigating the crystallized sand has nudged something far different, an entire timeline, which is fragile and malleable, ethereal, shaped by observation. Though the idea remains inconclusive, the notion that his pursuit of knowledge could have unknowingly triggered a greater unfolding lingers in the air long after he leaves the laboratory.